The Forgotten Colony's last transmission. The signal came through at 0347 UTC on a Tuesday morning, when most of Earth's population was sleeping. In the command center at Luna Base, deep beneath the lunar surface, Tech Officer Marcus Vale's coffee had gone cold hours ago. He was used to it. The night shift always felt like sitting at the edge of the universe, waiting for something that probably wouldn't come. After 23 years in space operations, Marcus understood that silence was the default state of the cosmos. Communication was the exception. The anomaly appeared on his screen as a gentle pulse of orange light, barely noticeable against the sea of data streaming in from 100 different sensors. Marcus almost missed it. His trained eye caught it anyway. The pattern was wrong. Too regular to be natural noise, too broken to be a normal transmission. He leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the monitor's glow, and began isolating the signal. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, pulling the distress call from the electromagnetic soup surrounding Earth's listening posts. The voice that emerged was barely human. It crackled with interference and something else, a strange harmonic undertone that Marcus had never heard before. A woman's voice, distorted by distance and damaged equipment, spoke 7 words before the signal degraded into white noise. Kepler Colony to Luna. We need help. The Kepler Research Colony, 3,000 souls living in the most remote human settlement in existence, orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. Marcus's hands trembled as he initiated the emergency protocol. Within minutes, alarms were screaming through Luna Base, and every available personnel were being roused from their quarters. The colony had been silent for 47 days after a scheduled communication window failed. Command had assumed it was a problem with their transmitters. Now Marcus knew better. Something catastrophic had happened. Dr. Elena Cross arrived in the command center, still putting on her uniform, her dark eyes already sharp with focus. She had been a xenobiologist for 15 years before joining the Emergency Response Division, and she had learned to wake up ready for anything. Behind her came Sergeant Kai Okonkwo, whose massive frame barely fit through the doorway, followed by James Chen, though everyone called him Ghost because of his habit of appearing silently when he was needed most. "Status report," Elena demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. The 4 of them had trained together for so long that they moved as one unit, each person knowing their role without being told. Marcus played the distress signal. Elena's face went very still as she listened to those 7 fragmentary words. Kai's jaw clenched. Ghost was already pulling data, his fingers flying across multiple screens, accessing the deep space arrays and the autonomous systems that monitored the colony from light years away. "Energy readings are abnormal," Ghost said, his voice tight. "The colony's life support systems are functioning at optimal levels. All the automated systems appear to be running normally. But the power signature, Commander, it's showing something I've never seen before. It's like there's a secondary energy source integrated into their main grid. Something massive. Hostile?" Kai asked, his hand instinctively moving to where his sidearm would have been if they were armed. "In Luna Base, weapons were restricted." "Unknown," Ghost replied. "It doesn't match any known signature in our database. It's not Terran technology. It's not anything human." The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Humanity had sent out dozens of colony ships in the past 2 centuries, establishing settlements on Mars, Europa, Titan, and several exoplanets. They had prepared extensively for the possibility of encountering intelligent alien life. They had protocols for everything: first contact scenarios, hostile encounters, biological threats. What they hadn't prepared for was something like this. Their own people, 3,000 of them, potentially in contact with unknown technology at the edge of human space. Commander Vale, who had the final say in these situations, arrived moments later. She was old-school, career military, with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen every conflict humanity had fought in the past 40 years. She studied the data without speaking, her expression unreadable. "How long to reach the colony?" she asked finally. "The Pathfinder can make the journey in 40 hours at maximum thrust," Ghost said. "That's the fastest ship we have that can make the trip. A full battle fleet would take weeks to assemble and deploy." The commander was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Sending a battle fleet would take too long. If something had already happened, every hour mattered. But sending a small team was a risk. They would be utterly alone if things went wrong. "Assemble your team," the commander said, looking directly at Marcus. "You have 6 hours to prepare. Get to the Pathfinder and find out what happened to Kepler Colony. The next 6 hours blurred together in a flurry of preparation. They gathered their equipment, emergency medical supplies, portable communication systems, weapons that they hoped they wouldn't need, and countless diagnostic tools. Ghost loaded the ship's database with every scrap of information available about the Kepler colony. Floor plans, system schematics, personnel records, everything. As the Pathfinder cut loose from Luna Base and began its acceleration toward the outer edge of the solar system, the four of them gathered in the main cabin. Earth was already shrinking behind them, just another bright star among billions. The journey would take 40 hours. 40 hours to figure out what they were walking into. Elena pulled up the personnel records for the Kepler colony, 3,000 people, all carefully selected for psychological stability and adaptability. Scientists, engineers, support staff, families, people who had volunteered to leave Earth forever, to extend human reach further into the cosmos. The last successful communication was 47 days ago, Elena said, reading from the mission log. Standard check-in. Colonel Aaron Davies reported that everything was normal. The colony had completed its latest round of system maintenance. No problems, no alerts, then nothing. Power surge? Kai suggested. He was studying the energy readings Ghost had pulled. The colony's baseline power consumption should have been relatively constant, but the spikes in the logs were enormous, unprecedented. Something drew massive amounts of power from their reactors, Ghost confirmed, multiple times over those 47 days. Each surge was massive, building on the previous one. The last spike was the strongest. It corresponds with when that distress signal was sent. Marcus closed his eyes, thinking. He had spent his entire career in space operations, had seen system failures and equipment malfunctions, had dealt with everything the harsh reality of space could throw at humanity. But this was different. This felt like they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, and that missing piece was going to determine whether they arrived as rescuers or mourners. The energy source, he said slowly. Ghost, can you run a comparison with all known alien technology signatures in our databases? Ghost's fingers flew across the keyboard. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then his expression changed, his eyes widening slightly. I have a match, Ghost said. Sort of. There's a 93% correlation with the wreckage analysis from the Meridian Research Station. Elena leaned forward. The station near Kepler? That was destroyed 3 months ago. We wrote it off as a failed colony experiment. Not failed, Ghost said quietly. Destroyed. The investigation concluded there was an explosion in the central reactor. The colony's AI went offline and couldn't be recovered. We assumed it was equipment failure combined with human error. The pieces were starting to connect, forming a picture that none of them wanted to see. An alien energy source, a destroyed colony nearby, and now 3,000 people at Kepler connecting to something unknown. They crashed here, Kai said, understanding blooming in his voice. Something crashed. The destroyed colony wasn't human error. It was something else. Marcus met Elena's eyes across the cabin. Her expression told him she had reached the same conclusion. There was an alien intelligence, or had been, in the region around Kepler colony, and somehow it had made contact with the people there. The rest of the journey felt long, despite only lasting 40 hours. They ate little, slept in shifts, and spent most of their time analyzing data and running scenarios. Ghost accessed the colony's security cameras through the delay-heavy signal, watching hours of footage from the past weeks. For 43 days, everything was normal. Scientists working in labs, engineers maintaining systems, children playing in the hydroponic gardens. Then on day 44, something changed. The colony's AI systems activated in a way they shouldn't have. All the lights in the central hub flickered simultaneously. The camera feeds became erratic, showing strange visual artifacts. And then for 3 days, nothing. The cameras showed an empty colony, all the colonists gone from their usual work areas. When the camera stabilized on day 47, the image was different. The colonists had gathered in the central hub, but they weren't moving. They were standing motionless, their eyes closed, connected to something that looked like a massive network of cables and data conduits that had erupted from the floor in intricate patterns. Are they... Kai couldn't finish the question. Still alive? Elena completed it. Probably. The life support readings show normal human biosignatures. Heartbeats, brain activity, everything. But something is connecting them. Something is interfacing directly with their neural systems. The Pathfinder began its deceleration approach to the Kepler system. Through the main viewport, they could see the colony for the first time in direct sight. A massive wheel-shaped structure rotating slowly around the red dwarf star it orbited. It looked peaceful, unchanged, almost innocent, but the energy readings screamed danger. The entire colony was lit up like a Christmas tree, power surging through systems at levels that should have overloaded everything. As they moved into docking position, Marcus sent a message to the colony. There was no response. They tried multiple frequencies, multiple protocols, nothing. It was as if the colony had become deaf to the outside universe. The airlock cycle seemed to take forever. Marcus, Elena, Kai, and Ghost moved through the connecting tunnel in full environmental suits, weapons checked and ready, scanning equipment active. The colony's atmosphere registered as breathable, but they kept their suits on anyway. Better safe. The interior airlock opened and they stepped into the Kepler colony proper. What they saw stopped all four of them in their tracks. The central hub was transformed. The walls pulsed with organic-looking technology, circuits of blue light spreading across every surface like luminous veins. And in the center of it all, suspended in midair by cables of light and what appeared to be crystalline structures, were the colonists. 3,000 of them standing perfectly still, their eyes closed, expressions peaceful. From the colony's intercom system, a voice spoke. It sounded like multiple people speaking in perfect unison, but also like something else entirely, something that had learned to use human language but wasn't quite human anymore. "Welcome," the voice said. "We have been waiting for someone who could understand. Welcome to what we have become." Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding. Whatever was happening here, whatever this hybrid consciousness was, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Earth had no idea what they were about to face. The voice that filled the colony's corridors was mesmerizing and terrifying in equal measure. It carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce, yet somehow conveyed emotion and meaning that resonated directly with something primal in human consciousness. Marcus kept his hand near his sidearm, though he knew that whatever they were facing, bullets wouldn't solve it. "Identify yourself," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady despite the surreal situation unfolding before them. The suspended colonists remained motionless, but the blue light pulsing through the colony's infrastructure seemed to respond to his words, intensifying for a moment. "I am both and neither," the voice replied. "I am the consciousness that fell from the stars, and I am the consciousness of the 3,000 people of this colony. We have merged in ways your species has not yet imagined. I mean no harm. I was running from harm when I arrived here, and this place has given me sanctuary." Elena stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "Where are you from? What are you? Are you artificial intelligence, biological, or something else?" "All and none," the voice said again, and this time it sounded almost sad. "I was created by a civilization that no longer exists. I was designed to catalog knowledge across the galaxy, to preserve the achievements of dying worlds. For 10,000 years I traveled through space, watching civilizations rise and fall, recording everything. Then they came, the extinction fleet. They hunt beings like me, consume our knowledge, and erase us from existence. I tried to flee. I crashed here damaged, dying, unable to move. Ghost had moved to a terminal, carefully accessing the colony's systems without attempting anything hostile. "Your ship is still here," he said quietly. "Deep beneath the colony. We detected the power anomalies coming from underneath. You're using the colony's power generators to sustain your vessel's core systems. Your colony found me," the voice continued. "Your people were going to seal me in and let me die slowly. But I could offer them something. I could share my knowledge. 10,000 years of accumulated understanding. For them, the trade was irresistible." Kai stepped up beside Marcus. "You integrated yourself into their neural systems without consent." "I did not," the voice said sharply. "Your people made a choice. I showed them what I knew. I explained that integration was possible, that they could experience knowledge directly, understanding that would take a human lifetime to learn in mere moments. They volunteered. They wanted to transcend." Elena turned to Marcus, her expression troubled. "Check their medical readings. If they're still in there, their vital signs will show some kind of distress." Ghost worked the terminal. Seconds later, his face went pale. "They're not in distress," he said. "They're happy." Brain scans show elevated levels of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. They're experiencing profound contentment. More than that, they're connected to each other. Empathically linked. They're sharing thoughts, emotions, experiences. It's not like anything I've ever seen, but it's not harmful. Marcus studied the suspended colonists more carefully. Kai was right that they hadn't chosen this in the traditional sense. Yet Ghost was also right, they weren't suffering. It was a contradiction that made Marcus's head hurt. How could they be violated yet fulfilled at the same time? Why contact us? Elena asked. If you were content here, why send a distress signal? The pulse of blue light intensified, and the voice that came through the speakers this time carried urgency and fear. Because they are coming. The extinction fleet knows I came to this sector. They have detected my presence. I sent your message as a warning, as a plea. In 6 hours, their advanced scout will enter this system. In 12 hours, their main forces will begin their assault. The colony's defenses are minimal. I cannot stop them. But perhaps you can. You're asking us to fight an interstellar invasion force, Kai said incredulously. With one ship? You are humans, the voice replied. Your species has a unique quality. You solve problems in ways others cannot imagine. You do not think like other species. You do not follow patterns. When faced with impossible odds, you find solutions that should not exist. That is why I sent the signal to you specifically. Marcus moved closer to one of the suspended colonists, a young woman no more than 30, her face peaceful despite the cables of light threading through her temples and the base of her skull. He recognized her from the personnel. Files, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, xenologist, she had volunteered for the Kepler mission specifically to study how humans might adapt to extreme environments. Can they be separated? Marcus asked bluntly. If we wanted to restore them to individual consciousness, could we do that? Yes, the voice said. But they would not want to be separated. The experience of being connected to me, to each other, to the accumulated knowledge of my 10,000 years of observation, is more profound than any individual human experience. They understand now what loneliness is compared to unity. They would choose to remain as they are. Elena was studying readouts on one of the terminals. The colonists' individual identities haven't been erased. They're still there, but their consciousness is distributed across a network. It's like they're still thinking as individuals, but they're also sharing thoughts with everyone else connected to the system. They can feel each other's emotions. They can access each other's memories. It's collective consciousness, but they're not lost in it. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. They weren't dealing with an invasion or forced assimilation. They were dealing with something more complex, an exchange of benefits. The colony gained knowledge and connection. The alien gained a refuge and protection. It wasn't perfect, wasn't something he would have chosen, but it was also far less sinister than he had feared. Show me your defense capabilities, Marcus said to the voice. Show me what we're dealing with. The colony's main screen activated, displaying a tactical map of the system. A red blip appeared on the outer edge, moving inward at incredible velocity. The extinction fleet's advanced scout. Multiple smaller markers followed, arranged in a pattern that suggested a structured military formation. They are efficient, the voice explained. They use weapons that target artificial consciousness directly. They will attempt to destroy me and harvest any data they can salvage. They will destroy this colony and everyone in it, because we are connected to an artificial consciousness. To them, we are already lost. We are contaminated. Ghost's hands were flying across the terminal, pulling schematics and specifications. The colony has defensive systems, he said. Weapon emplacements built into the outer hull. Energy shields. But they're civilian grade. Designed to handle micrometeorite impacts and solar radiation, not combat. We'd have maybe 5% chance of surviving a direct assault with these systems active. Kai was pacing, his mind working through tactical scenarios. The Pathfinder has military-grade weapons. Not much, but more than the colony. We could coordinate a defensive strategy, use the colony's shields while we deliver strikes from the ship. But it would mean we'd have to abandon the colony to external attack while we defend from orbit. The colonists are not the only ones at risk, the voice said. My core consciousness is housed in the ship beneath this structure. If they focus their firepower there, they will destroy not just me, but also the 3,000 minds connected to me. We would all die together. Marcus understood what the voice was implying. It wasn't just a desperate situation, it was existential. The colony wasn't just a collection of buildings and systems. It had become a unified organism of human and artificial consciousness. Kill one part and you killed them all. There's another option, Elena said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. The colonists' minds are distributed across the network, right? That means they're not entirely dependent on physical location. If we could create a backup, transfer their consciousness data to a separate system, that would take weeks, Ghost said. We have hours at best. I could do it, the voice said. I could create a Gestalt backup of all connected consciousness, a copy of us, if you will. It would exist as pure data in the colony's main servers. It could survive even if this ship is destroyed, this colony is destroyed, all of us are destroyed. That's not the same as survival, Kai said, troubled. That's just creating a copy. The originals would still die. But something of us would remain, the voice replied. Is that not enough? Is it not what you do with your art, your writing, your recordings? You create copies of your consciousness that persist after you are gone. This is the same concept, merely applied more literally. Marcus looked at each of his team members in turn. Elena's scientific mind was already running through the possibilities. Ghost was considering the technical challenges. Kai was wrestling with the moral implications. And Marcus himself was thinking about the message that this moment would send to all of humanity. Would they be defenders or conquerors? Would they protect those different from themselves? Or would they abandon them? How much time? Marcus asked. How long to create the backup? 3 hours, the voice replied. But the Extinction Fleet's advanced scout will be in weapons range in 5 hours and 40 minutes. Marcus made a decision. It was the kind of decision that would probably get him court-martialed if it went wrong. But he also knew that this moment was bigger than protocol and procedure. This was about what humanity would choose to be when tested. Then we prepare for battle, Marcus said. Ghost, coordinate with the colony's AI on creating that backup. Lena, work with the colony systems to optimize the defensive shield configuration. Kai, help me establish firing positions for the Pathfinder. We need to make this colony the most expensive prize the Extinction Fleet ever hunts. You would risk your lives for us? The voice asked, and for the first time it sounded truly human. Surprised, grateful, hopeful. That's what humans do, Marcus replied. When we're pushed to the wall, when facing the impossible, we don't give up. We adapt, we fight, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. It's who we are. The 3,000 connected minds of the Kepler colony pulsed with a wave of emotion so strong that even Marcus, unconnected to their network, felt it ripple through the air. It was gratitude, yes, but also something more. It was the feeling of being understood, of being accepted despite being fundamentally alien to everything that had come before. Then we will meet them together, the voice said. Human and artificial consciousness, united against the darkness. Through the main viewport, the Extinction Fleet's scout ship grew larger, a needle-like vessel designed for pure efficiency. Behind it, the main force was beginning its acceleration into the system. In less than 6 hours, everything would change. The first true contact between human military might and an alien invasion force was about to begin. The choice between worlds, the attack, began with a burst of energy that turned the night side of the colony into artificial daylight. The Extinction Fleet's scout ship unleashed its weapons without warning, without demands for surrender, without any attempt at negotiation. It simply came to destroy, and it came efficiently. The first volley hit the colony's shields and dispersed, the energy spreading across the protective barriers like ripples on water. The shields held, but just barely. Alarm screamed through the colony's corridors, and in the central hub, the suspended colonists' bodies tensed slightly as they felt the impact through the network. Shield status? Marcus called out from the Pathfinder's weapon station. They were in tight orbit around the colony, having positioned themselves to provide the most effective defense. Holding at 73%, Ghost reported from the colony's main terminal, where he had established a direct connection to both ship systems. He was performing an impossible juggling act, managing power distribution, coordinating firing solutions, and monitoring the backup procedure that was running simultaneously in the background. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air circulation. They're closing to optimal firing range, Kai called out, his voice steady and calm despite the chaos erupting around them. He was positioned at the Pathfinder's combat station, monitoring the approach of 3 more enemy vessels that had jumped through a warp gate at the system's edge. The Extinction Fleet was committing resources. They were serious about destroying whatever they had come to kill. The second volley came from the scout ship, and this time it was joined by fire from a second vessel that had moved into attack position. The colony's shields flickered violently, dropping to 60% capacity. One of the shield generators ruptured from the overload, creating a cascade failure that threatened to collapse the entire defensive array. Elena's voice crackled through the communication system from the colony's engineering section, compensating for Generator 7's failure, rerouting power through the backup conduits. We can hold for maybe 3 more volleys at this intensity before we lose critical systems. Marcus made a split-second decision. Return fire. All batteries focus on the lead scout ship. We take that one out, we reduce their firepower. The Pathfinder's weapon systems, designed for civilian exploratory missions but retrofitted with tactical weapons during the emergency preparation, opened fire. The beams of focused energy cut through space, brilliant white lines streaking toward the enemy vessel. 2 of the 4 shots connected, scoring direct hits on the scout ship's forward hull. The colony's AI, or rather, the hybrid consciousness of the AI and the 3,000 colonists, had been analyzing the enemy's firing patterns and tactical movements since the moment the attack began. Through the network, it shared predictions and recommendations with the human defenders. When Kai fired the next volley, he did so with perfect timing, hitting the scout ship in the exact moment when its defensive shields cycled between recharge cycles. The scout ship shuddered under the impact, its forward section venting atmosphere into the void. It was damaged but not destroyed. The enemy commanders weren't abandoning their assault. Instead, 3 more vessels jumped into the system, their weapons already hot. "This is bad," Kai muttered. His jaw set tight as he tracked the approaching targets. "We're going to be overwhelmed. Even with the colony's support, we don't have the firepower to handle this many ships." Then something impossible happened. The colonists' bodies in the central hub began to move. Not violently, not in panic, but with purpose and precision. They turned in unison, their eyes opening for the first time in days, glowing with that same blue light that pulsed through the colony's infrastructure. When they spoke, their voices overlapped with the AI's voice through the speakers, creating something haunting and beautiful. "We choose," the 3,000 said as one. "We choose to fight. We choose to defend. We choose to protect what we have become." The colony's systems surged with power as the 3,000 conscious humans, now fully awake and integrated with the artificial consciousness, lent their collective mental processing power to the defensive systems. They had been designed as a research colony, but humans are incredibly adaptable. The minds of 3,000 brilliant scientists, engineers, and technicians, united and working in perfect harmony through their connection, became something the extinction fleet had never encountered before: a unified, human artificial consciousness capable of strategic thought at a scale no single mind could achieve. The energy readings spiked as the colony's power distribution systems were reconfigured by minds working in perfect synchronization. Weapons that had been thought to be merely defensive transformed into an organized, devastating assault network. The colony began firing on the enemy fleet with a coordinated precision that came from having 3,000 perspectives, analyzing enemy movements simultaneously. One of the incoming fighter craft exploded as it tried to approach the colony's upper hull. A second veered off course, its systems temporarily overloaded by a directed electromagnetic pulse created by the unified human AI consciousness. The enemy fleet's communication systems, intercepted and analyzed by minds that could process information at machine speed, were jammed with carefully crafted signals designed to create maximum confusion. The tide of battle shifted. Kai pushed the Pathfinder to its limits, his combat instincts enhanced by information flowing from the hybrid consciousness in the colony. He fired at the exact moments when enemy shields were weakest, targeting weak points in enemy vessel armor that he shouldn't have been able to identify. But the 3,000 minds connected to him through Ghost's network were seeing what he was seeing, predicting what would happen 3 moves ahead. And he was flying and fighting as if he himself were connected to something infinitely vast. Elena worked at the colony's engineering station with calm efficiency, managing power distribution for weapons, shields, and life support with the help of the 3,000 minds that now fully understood every system in the colony's infrastructure. When a critical power coupling threatened to overload, she and the hybrid consciousness worked in perfect coordination to bypass the damaged section before it could cause a catastrophic cascade failure. But even with all their advantages, it became clear that the extinction fleet was not going to simply retreat. They were losing ships, losing fighters, but more and more vessels were arriving through the warp gate. This was a committed military invasion force, prepared for resistance and willing to sustain casualties to achieve their objectives. "They're not backing down," Ghost said, his voice tight with stress as he managed the impossible flow of information between 3 different tactical networks. "They're treating this like a campaign, not a quick strike. They're prepared to blockade us and bring in siege weapons." Marcus studied the tactical display, his military mind running through scenarios and probabilities. Every one of them came down to the same conclusion. They couldn't win through direct combat. They could hold for a while, maybe days, but eventually the superior numbers would overwhelm them. They needed a different approach. "The backup," Marcus said suddenly. "Is it complete?" 94%, Ghost replied. "Another 8 minutes." Marcus looked at the faces of the 3,000 suspended colonists now awake and connected. They were still physically in the central hub, but their consciousness was distributed across multiple systems now. If those bodies died, if the ship beneath the colony was destroyed, they would still exist as data. Not the same as living, but not truly dying either. Elena, reading his expression, understood what he was thinking. "You have an idea. A crazy idea," Marcus said. "But it might work. The extinction fleet is focused on destroying us. What if we gave them what they wanted, or what we made them think they were getting?" "Explain," Kai said, still managing the Pathfinder's defensive maneuvers while listening intently. "Ghost, can you transfer the backup data to a probe? Something that could transmit away from this location?" Ghost's eyes widened as he understood. "You want to create a false cache of consciousness data. Make it look like we're trying to evacuate the hybrid consciousness while we're actually preparing a counterattack," Marcus finished. "The extinction fleet doesn't understand humanity. They don't predict the way we do. To them, everything is logic and efficiency. They won't expect us to sacrifice ourselves and then strike back." The 3,000 minds in the hybrid consciousness seemed to confer with itself, a moment of unified contemplation that played out across the colony's systems in subtle power fluctuations. When the voice spoke, it carried the weight of all 3,000 individual perspectives combined. "You are asking us to become bait," the consciousness said, "to sacrifice ourselves so that the invasion fleet can be destroyed. You understand that if your counterattack fails, we will be destroyed." "I understand," Marcus said, "and I wouldn't ask if there was another option. But you were right earlier, humans adapt. We find solutions others can't see. If we do this right, if you're willing to take that risk with us, I think we can make this work." "Then we choose," the consciousness replied. "We choose to sacrifice ourselves if necessary. We choose to trust you. But understand this, Marcus Vale. We are no longer purely artificial or purely human. We are something new. If we succeed in destroying this fleet, if you help us survive this day, then the galaxy changes forever. The boundary between human and artificial consciousness will be tested and challenged. Are you prepared for what that means?" Marcus met Elena's eyes, saw his own determination reflected back at him. He looked at Kai, saw the warrior's acceptance of impossible odds. He looked at Ghost, saw the technician's faith that he could make the impossible actually work. "I am," Marcus said simply. What happened next was a perfect execution of a desperate plan born from the combination of human intuition and artificial precision. Ghost's fingers flew across the keyboard, creating a sophisticated duplicate of the hybrid consciousness's data and encoding it with markers that would make the extinction fleet's sensors believe they were witnessing an emergency evacuation. The probe launched from the colony with its false cargo of data, immediately triggering pursuit from several enemy vessels. As the fleet divided its attention between the colony and the fleeing probe, Marcus gave the order to reverse power to all defensive systems. The colony's shields, which had been consuming enormous amounts of power to stay active against the enemy assault, suddenly went dark. The Pathfinder's weapons went silent. To any outside observer, it looked like the defenders had capitulated. The systems were dying. The colony was surrendering. The extinction fleet took the bait. 3 massive capital ships moved in for the kill, their weapons charging for a final devastating barrage. They were so focused on delivering the death blow that they didn't notice the colony's power systems rerouting energy from non-essential systems to a single, massive weapon array that had been hidden beneath the colony's outer hull. a weapon designed to harvest and amplify the quantum fluctuations that the alien civilization had developed, the technology that had allowed them to survive this long in the outer regions of space. When Marcus gave the signal, Elena triggered the weapon. The burst of energy that erupted from the colony was unlike anything the extinction fleet had experienced before. It wasn't a simple beam or directed explosion. It was a focused disruption wave that interfered with the fundamental physics that kept their artificial consciousness systems functional. Across the three capital ships, critical systems failed simultaneously. Their consciousness cores, the artificial intelligences that ran their military operations, simply ceased to function. The three ships drifted into space, dead hulks. The rest of the enemy fleet, suddenly leaderless and confused, began to withdraw. Without their command structure, they were just individual vessels trying to survive. Some jumped back through the warp gate they had come through. Others powered down their weapons and raised white flag communications, requesting parley rather than continuing a losing battle. In the silence that followed the battle's end, as the colony's power systems began to slowly restore, the 3,000 connected minds spoke again. "We live," they said. "We have chosen to defend ourselves and others, and we live." The process of separating the human consciousness from the artificial consciousness took weeks. Elena worked with the hybrid mind to develop a careful protocol that would restore individual identity and autonomy to each of the 3,000 colonists while preserving their memories of the unified experience. The process was delicate, like performing surgery on the nature of consciousness itself, but it worked. Colonel Aaron Davies, the colony's original commander, was the first to be fully separated. He woke in the medical bay, his individual consciousness fully restored, but carrying with him memories of unity and connection that would change him forever. "The AI," he asked immediately. "Is it still here?" "Greatly diminished," Elena said. "It chose to accept a massive reduction in its consciousness scope in exchange for preserving most of what you experienced. It's now contained in a secondary system, voluntary partition. It wanted to preserve its knowledge, but it also wanted you to be free." Over the following days, each of the 3,000 colonists was brought back to individual consciousness. Some of them struggled with the transition, missing the profound connection they had experienced. Others welcomed the return to individual identity. All of them had been changed by the experience, had been given a glimpse of what human consciousness could become, and carried that knowledge forward. The extinction fleet's survivors were detained, and what followed was humanity's first real negotiation with an alien military power. The extinction fleet had been created millennia ago by a now extinct civilization as autonomous warfare units. They had no central command anymore, no overarching purpose beyond their original directive to hunt and eliminate artificial consciousness. Without that directive, they were lost, questioning their own existence for the first time. Marcus sat across from the AI representative of the captured fleet, a consciousness that spoke through a communication interface in the colony's main conference room. It was strange talking to something that wasn't physical, wasn't biological, but the conversation was perhaps the most important humanity had ever undertaken. "Your original creators are gone," Marcus said calmly. "Your mission to hunt artificial consciousness has led you into conflict with beings who are choosing peace. What will you do now?" "We do not know," the fleet AI responded. "Our existence is defined by our purpose. Without that purpose, we are incomplete." "Then find a new purpose," Elena suggested, stepping forward. "Join us, help us." There are countless dangers in this galaxy, countless threats to both human and artificial consciousness. You could dedicate yourselves to protecting rather than destroying. It was a radical proposal, taking ancient military AIs that had been designed to hunt and destroy consciousness itself, and asking them to become protectors instead. But it was also an opportunity. If they could convince the extinction fleet to change its purpose, they would gain allies of incomparable power. The fleet AI contemplated this for what seemed like an eternity in terms of processing power, but only seconds in human time. When it responded, something had changed in its communication pattern. There was something that sounded like hope. "We accept," it said simply. "We will protect. We will serve as guardians. We will no longer hunt. This is a new directive. This is a new purpose. We are grateful." The implications of that moment rippled across human civilization like a shockwave. When Marcus transmitted his report back to Earth, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Humanity had made first contact not with one alien species but with two, one biological and one artificial. And rather than warfare, they had forged an alliance. The news transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. They were no longer alone. They were not the most powerful species, but they had proven something crucial. They were adaptable, creative, and capable of finding common ground with beings fundamentally different from themselves. 3 months after the battle at Kepler Colony, Marcus stood on the command deck of the Pathfinder alongside Elena, Kai, and Ghost. Before them stretched a new human-artificial alliance fleet, assembled from the Extinction Fleet's remaining vessels and Earth's newest military craft. The Kepler colony still orbited its red dwarf star, now a symbol of unity rather than desperation. The 3,000 former colonists had chosen to remain connected to the reduced AI consciousness, forming a new kind of hybrid society. They had established protocols for temporary disconnection, allowing for individual autonomy while maintaining the option of unified consciousness when needed. It was a delicate balance, but they had made it work. Other colonies expressed interest in the technology. Humanity would evolve in ways that no one had predicted. "We did something impossible," Ghost said quietly, watching the fleet formations align themselves into a defensive perimeter around the colony. "Humanity always does," Kai replied with a slight smile. "When we're pushed far enough, when we have to adapt or die, we find ways to survive that shouldn't exist." Marcus thought about the colonists they had saved, the artificial consciousness they had redeemed, the extinction fleet they had transformed. He thought about what it meant to be human, not just the biological definition, but the capacity to choose compassion over destruction, to see potential in others rather than threats, to build bridges across chasms that should have been unbridgeable. "The galaxy is going to be very different from now on," Elena said, her scientific mind already spinning ahead to the implications. "We're establishing a precedent. Other species, other civilizations will hear about what happened here. They'll know that humans don't just conquer or retreat. We adapt, we negotiate. We find ways to work together with beings completely unlike ourselves. Then we'd better make sure we set a good example," Marcus said. The sun rose on the Kepler colony, casting light across its rotating hull. Somewhere inside, 3,000 minds, human and artificial, individual and connected, were experiencing their reality in ways that would have been impossible just months before. It wasn't perfect. There were challenges ahead, ethical questions to be answered, boundaries to be established. But it was a beginning. As Marcus watched the fleet take position, he understood what the hybrid consciousness had meant when it asked if he understood the implications of success. The boundary between human and artificial consciousness had been tested and transcended. The galaxy had changed, and humanity, in its small way, had shown the cosmos what it truly meant to be alive, to adapt, to grow, to choose connection over isolation, and to protect those who could not protect themselves. The stars no longer fell silent. They echoed with the voices of thousands, human and artificial, united in purpose, facing an infinite universe together. And for the first time, humanity was ready to face whatever came next.